What began as mutual respect quickly turned into a public war of words, culminating in infamous clashes at events. For years, their feud symbolized the growing divide between rock's old guard and the raw authenticity of grunge. But now, almost 30 years later, Axl Rose has opened up about Kurt Cobain and Nirvana in a way fans never expected. After decades of silence, his surprising reflections have shed new light on their relationship and what really happened during their explosive rivalry. Let's find out. By the early 1990s, Guns N' Roses and Nirvana represented two completely different worlds in rock music. Guns N' Roses was at the height of its fame, fueled by the massive success of albums like Appetite for Destruction from 1987 and Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 in 1991. The band embodied the essence of 1980s rock excess, from their wild live shows to their hard-partying reputations. Frontman Axl Rose was a larger-than-life figure, known for his fiery personality, controversial interviews, and commanding stage presence. He openly embraced the rock star lifestyle, once saying, "I'm not here to be anybody's role model. I'm here to play music my way." On the other hand, Nirvana was leading a seismic cultural shift in music. Their 1991 album, Nevermind, had catapulted them into global superstardom, with Kurt Cobain emerging as the reluctant spokesperson for the grunge movement. Cobain's ethos could not have been more different from Axl's. He rejected the materialism and hedonism of 80s rock, instead championing authenticity, vulnerability, and emotional rawness in both his music and his life. "I don't want to be a rock god. I just want to make music that matters," Cobain once said. Tensions between their worlds were inevitable. Axl initially admired Nirvana and publicly praised their music. In interviews, he called Nevermind the best album of the year and even wore a Nirvana hat on stage during Guns N' Roses concerts. He went so far as to invite Nirvana to open for Guns N' Roses on tour in 1992, a move that at first glance seemed like a gesture of respect. However, Cobain and Nirvana declined Axl's invitation, not quietly but with public disdain. When asked about the offer, Cobain dismissed it, referring to Guns N' Roses as macho posturing and empty-headed rock nonsense. "We're not going to play with those idiots," Cobain famously told an interviewer. For Cobain, Guns N' Roses symbolized the very culture of excess and ego that grunge was rebelling against. Axl, who typically wasn't one to hold back, was clearly offended by the snub. To him, it wasn't just a rejection of the offer, it felt like a personal attack. Adding fuel to the fire, Courtney Love, Cobain's wife, also made her disdain for Guns N' Roses known, stirring the pot by referring to Axl as the biggest ego in music. Cobain did little to dial back these remarks, effectively positioning himself and Nirvana as the antithesis of everything Axl and Guns N' Roses stood for. Fans and critics alike began to see the rivalry as not just a clash between two bands, but as a symbolic battle between the decadence of 80s glam rock and the raw, stripped-down ethos of 90s grunge. As tension simmered, it was only a matter of time before their ideological differences erupted into full-blown animosity. The simmering tensions between Axl Rose and Kurt Cobain came to a dramatic boiling point on September 9, 1992, at the MTV Video Music Awards. Both Guns N' Roses and Nirvana were at the peak of their fame, and their presence at the same high-profile event set the stage for an inevitable confrontation. The evening became infamous, not for the awards themselves, but for the explosive backstage clash that unfolded between the two rock icons. The drama began when Courtney Love sarcastically shouted at Axl Rose as he walked by backstage, reportedly teasing him by saying, "Axl, will you be the godfather of my child?" Cobain and Love's daughter, Frances Bean Cobain, had been born earlier that year, and the comment was clearly intended as a joke. But Axl was not amused. In what became one of the most memorable moments of the rivalry, he turned to Kurt and shouted, "You shut your bitch up or I'm taking you down." The remark stunned onlookers, and the growing animosity between the two rock stars was laid bare for everyone to see. Rather than getting angry, Kurt diffused the moment with a sarcastic sense of humor that only escalated the situation further. He looked at Courtney and mockingly said, "Okay, Courtney, shut up." The Nirvana entourage burst into laughter while Guns N' Roses' crew fumed. What might have been an isolated moment instead became the spark for an all-out feud that would dominate headlines for weeks. The confrontation didn't end there. Later in the evening, more drama unfolded as members of Nirvana and Guns N' Roses crossed paths again. Duff McKagan, the bassist for Guns N' Roses, and Chris Novoselic, the bassist for Nirvana, nearly came to blows backstage after exchanging heated words. Security had to separate the two, and the tension lingered throughout the show. Meanwhile, Nirvana took the stage for their iconic performance of Lithium, but even that performance wasn't without drama. During the opening bars, bassist Chris Novoselic intentionally played wrong notes as a not-so-subtle jab at Axl and Guns N' Roses. At the end of their set, Dave Grohl further antagonized Axl from the stage, repeatedly shouting into the microphone, "Hi, Axl, hi, Axl," much to the amusement of the audience. Axl and Guns N' Roses, on the other hand, performed later that night, but the atmosphere backstage remained charged. After the event, Axl openly criticized Nirvana during interviews, calling them disrespectful and accusing Kurt of being a spoiled fake punk who tries too hard to look cool. He also declared that Kurt and Courtney's antics were beneath the dignity of real rock stars. Cobain, for his part, didn't hold back either. In an interview shortly after the MTV Awards, he doubled down on his disdain for Axl, stating, "I can't even believe we're in the same industry. He's the epitome of everything I'm trying to avoid. There's no room for his kind of ego in music." He went on to describe Guns N' Roses' brand of rock as dangerous for culture and just mindless aggression wrapped in makeup. The MTV Video Music Awards solidified the public perception of their feud as more than just creative differences. It was now an all-out clash of personalities and egos being fought on the largest stage in the world. Fans and journalists quickly picked sides, with some defending Axl's passionate dedication to traditional rock and others siding with Kurt's raw authenticity and disdain for the excesses of the industry. After Kurt Cobain's tragic death in 1994, the heated rivalry between Axl Rose and Nirvana fell silent. Despite their public clashes, Axl refrained from making any significant comments about Cobain or Nirvana in the immediate years following his death. While their feud had dominated headlines during the early 1990s, its abrupt end served as a sober reminder of the weight of fame and the fragility of those under its spotlight. As the years passed, Axl Rose himself began to evolve. The fiery and polarizing rock icon who had once embodied the wild excess of 1980s rock started to embrace a more introspective approach to his career and public persona. His infamous outbursts became less frequent and his focus shifted back to music, albeit amidst long hiatuses and challenges with Guns N' Roses. With time and distance, Axl started reflecting on his place in the music industry, and for the most part, he avoided reigniting past feuds, including his rivalry with Kurt Cobain. Axl Rose surprised fans by finally speaking candidly about his thoughts on Nirvana and Kurt Cobain. In a rare recent interview, Rose openly admitted that he hadn't fully appreciated Nirvana's impact at the height of their rivalry. "I see now how their music changed everything," he said. Kurt had a gift, and Nirvana shaped a generation in a way few bands ever do. His tone carried an air of admiration and understanding that had been absent during their public clashes decades earlier. Rose went on to address the root of their feud, suggesting that it was less about personal hatred and more about the overwhelming pressures of fame and creative identity at the time. "We were all kids trying to figure it out. Some of us fought and some of us ran from the fights," he explained, hinting at the inner turmoil that both he and Cobain likely faced from their vastly different positions in the rock world. Perhaps the most surprising aspect of Axl's reflection was his willingness to praise Nirvana's broader cultural influence. He described the grunge movement as a seismic shift that made a lot of us rethink what rock could be. While he admitted he hadn't fully understood Cobain as a person, he expressed genuine respect for Cobain's artistry, calling him innovative and acknowledging that Nirvana helped redefine rock music for a new generation. Rose's comments marked a stark departure from the bitter war of words between him and Nirvana in the 1990s. It revealed an older, more self-aware version of the rock legend. Someone who had grown past old grievances and learned to recognize the value of what Nirvana represented not just to music, but to an entire cultural moment. This newfound perspective from Axl Rose left many fans stunned, not only because it provided closure to a decades-old rivalry, but because it revealed the humanity behind one of rock's most controversial figures. It showed that even the most intense feuds, with time, could be softened by reflection and understanding. Decades after their feud, the rivalry between Axl Rose and Kurt Cobain remains one of the most memorable clashes in rock history, not just because of the personal conflicts, but because of what it symbolized for music. Axl's recent remarks about Nirvana and Cobain illuminated the broader impact of their rivalry and how it defined a pivotal shift in the music industry. Guns N' Roses and Nirvana had embodied opposing forces in rock music: the extravagant, larger-than-life spectacle of 1980s hard rock versus the stripped-down, introspective realism of 1990s grunge. Kurt Cobain's sharp rejection of glamour and celebrity clashed directly with Axl Rose's embrace of rock stardom, but ironically, both men were deeply affected by the pressures of fame. While Kurt often spoke openly about his discomfort with success, Axl showed it through his erratic behavior, tumultuous relationships, and long absences from the public eye. In his later reflection at 63, Axl acknowledged just how much Nirvana's rise represented a turning point in rock music, not just culturally, but personally for him. They changed things for all of us. It wasn't just the sound, it was the attitude, he admitted. This recognition came after years of bitterness, where Axl had repeatedly dismissed Nirvana and Cobain's approach to music as anti-rock and pretentious. Interestingly, Axl also acknowledged how their public rivalry may have been amplified by outside forces, particularly the media and the expectations of their fan bases. He noted how the music press loved to pit the two against each other, feeding into the hostility. It wasn't just us fueling it, he admitted. Around that time, everyone wanted to see us go at it, and we gave them a show. However, Rose also expressed regret about how he handled things in the past. While he didn't apologize outright, he admitted in the same interview, "Being so young, we were reacting instead of thinking. If I'd been older, maybe things would have turned out differently." This comment struck a chord with fans, as it hinted at a degree of remorse about how personal the feud had become, especially in light of Kurt's tragic death. Reflecting on Cobain's death, Axl noted how it brought a sudden end to what might have one day turned into mutual respect. "We were too caught up in the moment to see the big picture. I didn't know him personally, but I can see now what he was fighting for, and I can respect that. He was trying to protect something pure." Axl's words not only highlighted the significance of Cobain's contributions to music, but also illustrated the toll that fame took on both men in different ways. While Axl survived the storm of his own career to reinvent himself and Guns N' Roses years later, Kurt's struggles proved insurmountable. To this day, fans continue to wonder what might have happened if Axl and Kurt had found common ground instead of clashing. Would they have collaborated, influenced each other's music, or perhaps rewritten the narrative of rock history together? These are questions that remain unanswered, but Axl's recent reflections offer at least a glimpse into what he now feels about their rivalry. The feud between Axl Rose and Kurt Cobain was more than just a high-profile clash between two of rock's greatest frontmen. It symbolized a shift in music, a passing of the torch from the bombastic rock culture of the 1980s to the raw, emotional honesty of the 1990s. For fans, their animosity brought to life the tension between these two opposing eras, making their rivalry both culturally significant and deeply personal. At 63, Axl Rose's recent reflections on Kurt Cobain and Nirvana provide a new perspective on this once explosive feud. His acknowledgement of Nirvana's influence and his respect for Cobain's artistry highlight the passage of time and the wisdom that comes with age. "Kurt had a gift," Rose said, "and Nirvana shaped a generation." These words stand in stark contrast to the fiery accusations and dismissive remarks from their earlier conflict, showing just how much the rivalry has evolved from resentment to recognition. For Kurt Cobain, his battles with fame and personal demons were much larger than his rivalry with Axl Rose. Yet, in retrospect, their feud was emblematic of the struggles he faced as an artist trying to stay true to his values in an industry obsessed with image and excess. Those same conflicts ultimately made Cobain a symbol of artistic integrity, even as they consumed him. Today, the identities of both Kurt Cobain and Axl Rose are intertwined, not because they work together, but because their conflict highlighted the best and worst sides of rock culture. Cobain's untimely death cemented his status as a martyr for the grunge generation, while Axl's survival and eventual transformation demonstrated the resilience of rock legends who refused to be defined by one era. As Axl Rose continues to perform and reflect on his legacy, his new perspective on Cobain stands as a testament to growth and understanding. While fans will never know what might have happened if the two had reconciled, Axl's nod to Nirvana's impact and Cobain's brilliance offers a kind of closure for a rivalry that once seemed insurmountable. For the world of rock, the feud between Axl Rose and Kurt Cobain remains an iconic story, a reflection of the pressures, egos, and ideologies that shaped two of the most important voices in music history. Their clash proved that even in conflict, legends can define generations. And as Axl now looks back with a respect that only time can bring, the rivalry stands not as a symbol of division, but as an enduring legacy of two artists who forever changed the face of music.